In this CSS3 lesson, we will demonstrate how simple and clean it is to achieve smooth, buttery custom animations for your button and menu systems. We're going to use one line of code to perform magic, while many of our peers are still including bulky JavaScript animation libraries to perform simple animations on their pages. And if you still see people like that, you can call them a sucker butt after you learn things like this. That's what I do. Before we take a look at the code, let's look at the finished product. And this menu system is geared to have on mouse over and on mouse out behavior. So you can see how they light up nice in an animated fashion when the mouse goes over them. And if the user swooshes their mouse across them, they get that cool, like Knight Rider effect. Remember Kit, the front of Knight Rider? Michael, what are you doing, Michael, with that babe? Okay, so it's a very simple way to achieve on rollover and on rollout event animations. Okay, let's start with the bare bones of an HTML5 web document, and I have mine named example.html, and you can name yours imgay.html. Now inside the body element, I'm going to create a new div, and actually in HTML5 you can use the nav element here instead of div. If you're going to have a menu bar or something like that, you might want to use the nav element instead of divs. But I'm just going to use a div, and I'll give this div an ID that's equal to menu bar 1, and I'll open up some space inside of that div so I can put some content there. Now we're going to make buttons out of the A element, the simple link element. So I'll put myself an A element there and make sure I give it the href attribute, and I'll make mine equal to # just for this example. But this is where you put the page that you want to navigate to. So if I wanted to go to contact.php, that would go there for navigational purposes. Okay, so I'll just put home as the label for that button. Then I'll make some copies of that. I'll make an about us, a services button, staff, and contact button. So this last one will be contact, this one will be staff, this one services, and this one about us. So if you render this in your favorite browser now, you'll see that you don't have anything very exciting, and it looks like one string of links that have no spaces in them, and that's exactly what you want. Now up in the head element of my document, I'm going to open up a style element and make sure I close that style element. First thing I'll do inside of the style element is I'll affect the body element on the page, the body tag, and I'll make its background color black, and I'll give it margin of 0, because usually by default pages have a little bit of margin space for left, top, right, and bottom. You can specify them as 0 pixels if you want to make sure there is no margin space. Now we're going to target this menu bar, because we're going to use this menu bar ID, the ID for this menu bar div, to affect all of the link elements inside of it to make buttons out of them. That way we don't have to put a class. For instance, right here, we don't have to put class for each one of these links. We can just target the menu bar. And since these A elements are all children of the menu bar, we can easily target them. So up in your CSS, you write div and the # to specify that you want to target by ID, and you can target the ID of menu bar. Open, close curly braces. And we're going to give this padding of whatever you want, 24 pixels, and a border property, just so you can see where this menu bar is residing on the page. And I'll give it a color of gray, 1 pixel dashed. Now you can take how you're targeting the menu bar there, and then go down one more line and say menu bar child A elements, get whatever properties you want to put here now. And this is how you can target all the A elements at once that live in the menu bar. Alright, let's stack some properties in here. First thing we do is specify the font family. Then we give it a font size. We give it a background color for each button, and that's what creates the button look, is your background. You can also put a URL. We pad the buttons, that way the words in the buttons have some nice cushion space around them. We're going to make the color of the text a nice light gray. Each one we're going to give a margin right property of 10 pixels. That way the buttons aren't all stacked up right next to each other side by side. They have a couple of pixels in between them. Text decoration is none. That way none of the words have underline. And border radius, just to give the buttons a little bit of rounded effect. Now if we render this in our favorite browser, you can see what you have. But we have no hover state yet. So to apply a hover state, you can just grab start of this rule, go down here, and then put :hover right after the A element, because that's the element that you want to target for hover purposes. Now within the hover state, we're going to change to these properties. We're just going to change the background and the color. Everything else will stay the same. And you can change many more properties if you want, but I'll just show you how to change these two, and we'll animate them using transition property. So now let's see what we have. This is the normal functionality that you get without animations. See? When I go over the button, they instantly change to that color. But we want a smooth animation, and you only have to add one single line to achieve that. Alright, so here we're going to add in the normal state of the button and not in the hover state. We're going to add the transition property. And I'm going to test this in all major browsers right now so you guys can see exactly which browsers it's working in or not using this standardized property. Usually you'll see the WebKit prefix, the Moz prefix, the MS prefix for Internet Explorer, and the O prefix for Opera. And I noticed that you do have to use the O prefix for Opera still, but the other browsers, all the modern versions of Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox, the transition will work using the standardized syntax. And I'm going to show you where you guys can learn more about the transition property at Develop PHP. That way you guys aren't in the dark about what properties you can animate and all of the features that you see within the property here. And what we're doing is putting code in to animate two properties, background and color. So the background, over half a second, actually let's make that a little quicker. Over 0.3 seconds, the background is going to animate in a linear fashion. And over 0.3 seconds, the color of the text is also going to animate in a linear fashion. And you can see 0 seconds means delay, so I don't want any delay, I want it to happen instantly for both the background and the color. So now let's see what we get. Now I'm going to run this in Chrome. Here's Google Chrome. See that nice animated effect I have now? So you can see Google Chrome is using the standardized property, and you don't have to put WebKit on the front of that transition. You don't have to put the WebKit prefix anymore. Now let's check this in Firefox. See? You don't have to use the prefix for Firefox either. Old versions of Firefox, you do have to use the prefix, okay? Now let's check this in Internet Explorer. No problem. And I'm using Internet Explorer 10. So if you want to target Internet Explorer 9 or 8, you can probably get away with putting MS right here. And that will work for older versions of Internet Explorer. So just make sure you put MS and then the transition property standardized version of the syntax under it. Okay? So this is for older versions of Internet Explorer. I believe it supports the transition property if you use the prefix. I'm not exactly sure. Now let's check this in Opera. So you can see in Opera it doesn't have that cool animated feature if we use just the transition property. So let's change this from MS to O. Now let's see what we get. File, Preview in Browser, Opera. Nice. Now I have smooth animations even in Opera. So that shows you how you can use those prefixes to target any older browsers or browsers that don't support the regular transition property syntax. Some browsers, older browsers especially, you might have to use prefixes. WebKit, Moz, MS, and O. And if you want to just be sure, put all of them in there. Put all 5 lines, and then after that, put the regular transition syntax under them, and you'll have no problems. Alright, let's take one more look at this. It's beautiful. And when you try it on your page and take a look at it, you'll see that how much smoother the animation is, because the frame rate of my video will kind of make the animation look a little choppy. But I'm telling you, it is smooth as butter.